Hi everyone, and welcome to Human Design 101. I'm Paula, your host, qualified life trust coach and human design fanatic. I guide my clients to become their own experts by understanding and, more importantly, living their design. When I first came to human design, I was so overwhelmed by the triangles, squares, arrows, and numbers in the chart that I didn't touch it for more than a year. However, my human design experiment has been the most important transformation in my life, which is why I want to show you how you can use your design as a simple tool to heal, transform, integrate, grow, and ultimately become your own expert. No more looking for the experts outside of you. Keep listening and learning here on the podcast, reach out for private coaching, or book a chart reading with me. Let's talk Human Design 101. Hi everybody, and welcome back to Human Design 101. Today's episode is really close to my heart because it is about Splenic Authority. So I probably should say it's close to my spleen rather than my heart to stay in human design terms. This podcast episode was inspired by a Reddit thread that a friend sent to me about Splenic Authority. And in this thread, there was a whole lot of wisdom about what I believe Splenic Authority is. And then after that, a discussion unraveled in which people were complaining about their Splenic Authority and what they think they can or can't do with it. And so today I want to speak about and share what I think Splenic Authority is and isn't, as well as give you a Splenic Authority toolkit that will help you navigate life as a splenic being, because it is really spontaneous and you might struggle with the spontaneous nature of your spleen and feeling like being able to function and be reliable in this modern world. So, as always, let's dive right in. What is Splenic Authority and what is it not? So the generic explanation of Splenic Authority, and I believe I have said it myself on the podcast, is a quiet whisper that speaks only once. And this is a thing that everybody tells you in the human design world. So of course, in the beginning, this is what you're trying to work with. And to be honest, Splenic Authority isn't really well explained over the internet, and that is because it is really hard to grasp. It is nothing that you really can hold on to with your mind. It is really body-based, and it is also, unlike the other authorities, something that is interested in your health and well-being. So if you're trying to understand Splenic Authority compared to Sacral Authority, that is giving you a reliable yes or no towards something in the moment that you can present it over and over and over again with, you're not going to get to the bottom of your Splenic Authority, because your Splenic Authority isn't going to have an opinion on everything and everyone. And it also is going to be a little bit more subtle and sometimes even negative. My spleen, I believe, says more no to things than yes to things, because the spleen is trying to keep you healthy and sane. And so it's not going to move directly towards something, but maybe rather away from something. Take this with a grain of salt, because of course it's going to move towards something, but in order to protect you from something else. So it might tell you to walk down this path because the other path had some sort of danger that you would have encountered there. My most, let's say, famous splenic story that people ask me to share all the time is the beanie story, which you might have heard if you have listened to the podcast for a little while. I'm going to tell it again because it is just such a great example of how the spleen works. And based on that story, we're going to look at how the spleen works in more detail. So a while ago, I was in Berlin and I was visiting one of my friends. And as soon as I entered her house, I put on a beanie, or maybe I was wearing it before, but when I was in her space, I wore a beanie. And this is really unusual for me. I don't really wear beanies. At least at the time, it was really unusual for me. I didn't really wear beanies or hats. But I just felt that it was right. And I felt like, I was like, I just want to wear this beanie. And it was funny because my friend even challenged me and was like, why are you wearing this beanie? You've been in here for hours. It's warm. Why are you wearing a beanie? And I said, I don't know, just feel like it. And, I slept there. We were hanging out on the couch together, really close together, chilling, talking, all the things. And the next day we had breakfast and I left. And shortly after, she called me and she said, I have lice and you should better check whether you have lice as well. But I didn't have lice because I was wearing a beanie all the time. And this is one of the great examples of the spleen is very obvious sometimes in retrospect, but not necessarily always super clear in the moment. You don't really know what's going on. You don't have an explanation as to why you're doing something. You just feel like doing something, or you strongly feel like don't or not doing something. And so this leads me to the number one thing that the spleen is not, at least for me, and I have my spleen consciously defined, meaning that the gates that define my spleen, they are on the personality side, not on the design side. So this might also make a difference, but my spleen never whispers to me. When I had heard this explanation in the beginning, I was always looking for a quiet voice, something auditory. And I am high sound in my determination. That means this is how I take in the world. So I am quite auditory. So for me, looking for this quiet whisper on the inside, the only thing that I found whispering was my mind, because anything else on the body level is, for me, quite action-based. I have root to spleen connection, so there is an adrenaline pulse related to it, which is maybe, well, for me, it expresses in a way that leads me away from something or towards something. So if you're still searching for a voice that is telling you to do or not to do something, you might be on the wrong path. Now, this Reddit thread explained it really beautifully and it really resonated with me, which is why I'm going to share it with you here now. The spleen acts in a way that when you're most relaxed, you will just do what the spleen wants you to do. The spleen will guide your attention to what you need to see to be healthy in the moment. Now, what could this look like? The best example I can give you is when I make my porridge in the morning, and I've been eating porridge for probably 15 years, but I never get bored of it because I put in different ingredients and I switch it up and I make it beautiful and I make it delicious. And but the point here is I switch up the ingredients. So when I put my porridge together, sometimes my eyes will suddenly notice sesame seeds. Sometimes my eyes will suddenly jump on pumpkin seeds. And I know that my spleen is giving attention to something that is perhaps needed in the body. And this is really interesting because you will notice, if you pay attention to this, that sometimes things pop out for you that are always there in your environment, but that you never really notice or take attention of. And so this might be a splenic nudge for you to notice something that is important for you right now to take in or to leave or to go towards or to stay away from. Also, something very, very reliable for me with the spleen is to stick with the first feeling, the first instinct, or sometimes I confuse it with the first thought that was there. It isn't actually the first thought. it is the instinct that is then overridden by a second thought. So for example, again, a food-based example is really easy because you can play with it all the time. But when I'm in a restaurant, there will be a first instinct to something like a butter chicken, for example, last night. And then my mind went in and was like, oh, but maybe it's going to be dry. You never really know what chicken is going to be like when you order it. Maybe you should eat malai kofta because you haven't had it in a while and it is what you so dearly love. It reminded you of being in New Zealand and And then I was like, wait, hold on. What was the first thing that came up with? And then I'm going to go with this. And it was the chicken and it was amazing. Your spleen is also not a dietary it is not a health coach that is going to guide you towards eating or not eating all the time what you need, but these examples are great to give you a better understanding of how the spleen works. So I'm going to say it again. The spleen works best when you are totally relaxed and you let your body just do and get out of the way. This is what happened with the beanie example. I was very relaxed. I came from 6 hours of sauna. And so I'm pausing here because I'm just thinking, what are people going to think if I say I was in the sauna for 6 hours? We're not doing sauna like Finnish people in Germany. There's a lot of resting involved in between going in and out of the sauna. So I came from the sauna. I was very relaxed and I just followed what felt right for me in the moment. So it is really letting the body guide you towards something and not second guessing what oftentimes is the first instinct. Not second guessing what you're drawn to do or not do, and not second guessing who you want to spend time with or not spend time with. And with the spleen, and this is now relating to this discussion on Reddit I referred to earlier, with the spleen, it can happen that you have to change your mind, what is perceived from the outer world as you changing your mind. You have to do that last minute because your spleen will give you last minute information of, nah, doesn't feel aligned anymore. Or, this restaurant doesn't feel good. This space doesn't feel good for me to walk into. Or, if this person is here, I don't think it's going to work for me today. And sometimes when you're following your Splenic Authority, you can feel a little bit like a downer because, like I said, for me, oftentimes it is a no rather than a yes. And you'll have to practice delivering these no's in kind, beautiful, sovereign, and determined ways. And this is really a practice. And so now these people on Reddit were understandably so complaining about how when they are following their Splenic Authority, they are not able to make any plans. They were like, okay, so basically I just have to totally go with the flow. I'm never going to be able to commit to anything unless it's spontaneous. And I don't want to do life this way. This kind of sucks. And I read it and I laughed and was like, yeah, that sucks. The idea or the belief that you're subscribing to here that you can't make any plans, it does suck. But I don't know, your spleen is not 100% of the times going to say no to the plans that you made. It is just going to occur sometimes. And for these occasions, I'm going to deliver you some beautiful pre-made, pre-practiced sentences that I use, that I've brainstormed, and that you can use in your life to kindly but firmly tell people your boundaries without needing to give an explanation, because that's a problem. We think that we need to give explanations when we change our minds. We think that we need to over-explain a yes or a no when we're the only people who think we need to reason. The others are very happy with just receiving our opinion, and when we manage to deliver it in a graceful way, the resistance on the outside is going to drop almost immediately. So let me say this again. As a splenic being, you can make plans. You can commit to things. You can plan to go for dinner. You can plan your holiday. You can plan your work day. You just need to be able to be spontaneous in adjusting these plans and changing these plans. And you need to be able to drop the idea of being perceived as unreliable. And especially if you are fifth line or you have a lot of fifth line, you need to wave the idea goodbye that you can live up to anyone's expectations 24/7. And I'm going to say it again and over. The only expectations that you need to live up to are yours. You, at the end of the day, need to be comfortable with the decisions that you made for yourself. And I'm going to give you another example of my life when I recently overrode my spleen and how that made me feel, because I think it's going to help you in understanding how important it is to be able to communicate those last-minute changes. So I was hosting a retreat last week. And by the way, if you want to join for our human design and yoga retreat in October in beautiful Carvajal in Portugal, click the links in the show note because it is going to be amazing. And oh my God, I can't wait to deliver a full-on yoga, sound healing, and human design experience all in one. It's a beautiful and unique blend. But back to the story. I was hosting a retreat, and for one day of the retreat, a hike was planned. And I had committed to go to the hike, but in the morning, I really didn't feel like going to it. I overrode it because I was like, I am part of the hosting team. I need to be here to support the group. I need to be enjoying these unique opportunities. I want to bond with the group. I want to see the environment. I really should go. So I went. When we got to the parking lot from where the hike started, I had my jumper, I had my jacket because it was sunny but windy. And then the guide came and said, you really don't need a jacket or you just need a layer to protect yourself from sun. And I was like, okay, if he says that, I am going to override my instinct and leave my jacket here. And I left without my jacket. We started the hike. It was so incredibly windy. I was frozen to the bone. I was so tired. I decided to leave early. And then I was scheduled in for dinner. I didn't feel like going to at all. I went out of responsibility and I left feeling in a state so cold and tired and frustrated where I wasn't even able to talk anymore. You know, when you're just sitting there and waiting to be back home and finally be able to relax. And so this is a beautiful story of how I overrode my spleen 3 times in a row with don't go to the hike, wear your jacket, you don't want to go out for dinner. And my body really beautifully delivered, well, kind of this, I told you so. It is, okay, you decided against it, and here you are feeling totally depleted. And so, yes, you can make plans. Sometimes you're going to stick to them. Sometimes you're not going to stick to them. But what's important is that you're learning to communicate when you want to change your plans in a sovereign way. And so I have brainstormed and put together some sentences for you that I use myself, some of them, and some of them are new that I really loved and that I'm going to incorporate. And the first one is simple. That doesn't work for me. Let's find another way, right? Easy as. The second one is I'm doing this for me, not against you. So when someone could perceive you pulling out of a date as letting them down, you really clearly communicate, I'm doing this for me, this is not against you. And you have taken your part of the responsibility and you leave the rest with the other person. A great one also for emotional authority is I'd rather not promise you that yet. I need time to think about it. I need time to sleep on it. I don't want to promise you that. Greatly, clearly communicating from the beginning on, I am not entirely sure whether this is going to work out for me. Another one, super validating, telling the person that I understand your perspective, I see where you're coming from, and yet I am going to choose differently. Same thing with, that sounds completely logical and it makes total sense to me, yet I'm going to trust my gut. You're telling your partner in conversation, I understand you, I see your point is valid, and I'm going to stick with myself, without over-explaining, without going into a deep dive of Splenic Authority and human design and how it went wrong when you didn't listen to it in the past and how you want to practice. No, simple as you're just, sorry, can't do that. Another great one for conversations is because the spleen knows, when my spleen at least knows, when I've taken in enough information. When I research something, there's a very clear point when it says, now you've got enough and you don't need anything from this resource anymore. Same thing happens in conversation. And even if you're not splenic, there are going to be points in your life when you're sitting in conversation, you're talking about something that you don't like to talk about. And beautifully, you can say, oh, sorry, I just realized I'm not really interested in talking about that right now. Could we please change the topic? Because I can guarantee you that the person that you're talking to would rather be a little bit taken aback for a second, but then talk with you and to you about something that you both enjoy, rather than knowing that they've talked to you about something for 2 hours that you absolutely hated. So it's like almost like ripping off a plaster. You want to be stern and firm and kind in the moment to facilitate something that works beautifully for both of you. Another great one is, I'd prefer to be with myself right now. I'm just noticing that I value alone time at the moment, but I'd really like to see you some other time. And one that I really loved is, thank you for trusting me to be honest, especially or even when it's hard for you to understand. This really expresses this like inconvenience, but the appreciation for the other person giving you that space, or assuming that they're giving you that space when you're taking up that space. Because when you're taking up that space and you're thanking the other person for letting you do that, it's almost like you're hypnotizing them into being cool with that, because you're comfortable and confident in communicating this. All these little sentences are going to be in the show notes. I recommend you make a notes app on your phone. You are practicing with them, and they are inspired by a book by a German coach. The book is available in English too. It's called 50 Sentences That Make Your Life Easier, and it's like a boundary toolkit. I recommend listening to it. The author gives you amazing explanations as to how to use these sentences and what they bring into your life. And just having these examples in your brain will help you confidently act in a different way. And so I trust that was valuable for you today, that you really understand that the spleen is not talking, at least not to me, that the spleen is working best by guiding your awareness when you're relaxed, so that you can notice how your awareness is being guided, and that the spleen is faster than the mind. So it's usually the first thing that drops in. And yeah, thank you and bye-bye until next week. Thank you so much for being here today and listening along to Human Design 101 with me, your host, Paula. I trust that you received exactly what you needed from today's episode, and I love how the universe matched us today. If you enjoy listening and learning with me, please leave a review wherever you are listening to this podcast so that more people can unlock their true selves and ultimately become who they were meant to be using human design. Until next time, lots of love and bye-bye.